Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Oscar Clark, he, him, and I am on a quest to learn everything you want to know about game dev but never dared to ask. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Michael. Michael, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hello, Oscar. So I'm glad to be back
Yeah.
because it's the second
Is it the
time.
second
Yeah, I
time?
came on a
Oh
few
my
years
goodness,
ago.
yes, yeah, of course it is. I mean,
Yeah, we were.
I always forget because I end up doing so many different podcasts. I forget whether it was one of mine we did before or somebody else's round table. But you're right, we have done one of these before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was back with you. I think it must have been 2022 now. To
Yeah.
be honest, we spoke a little bit about education
Yes.
and the importance of it within games dev. That's kind of the reason why I'm back here again, to be honest with you. So, my name is Michael. I'm the head of the Rizing Games UK games company and course lead here in Cambridge. So, I've got the really awesome opportunity of supporting students, the next generation of designers, to build their games and release them globally. So, we've been quite a lead in that world
Yeah.
at the moment within the education system. So I've been around many years doing this now. So it's I'm certainly at the point where I'm like, I want to share more
Yeah,
wisdom and share some
exactly.
lots of
And
stories.
we're in an interesting time. And this is a conversation we were having a little while ago, but I think it's such an interesting area, which is we all know the hidden secret or the not so secret
Mhm.
reality is that the last few years have not been great, and there were 50,000 odd jobs
Yeah.
lost in the industry. However, we're still advocating people go to college and learn about making games. I'm still jealous that you get to have courses.
Oh, it's a
It
wicked job.
never existed when I was growing up, and if only it had. I mean, I like to consider my education in games was playing D&D in my loft rather than studying for my A levels. At least that's what I keep telling my mother. But hey, I'm here. I've been in the games industry for nearly 30 years. I can't really complain. But let's dive into that. So obviously, we are in a point where it must be very hard for someone who is a student about to graduate or even contemplating taking on a games course. Or how would you kind of sum up the sort of state of mind of people in the space at the moment?
I think it's quite a tricky one in some ways because I think there are some students and I think some young people that don't always follow the news,
Yeah,
and that's okay. Sometimes it's a scary world,
it is,
to be honest
especially
with
right
you.
now.
But I think, yeah, without a doubt, I think there are some learners that they've clocked it.
Yeah.
Some of them I think are really looking beyond that. With us,
Mm.
they've come from school,
Yeah.
they're moving off and having started to learn who they're going to become and finding their way within games design. But more importantly, they're looking at university and their progression routes there. So I think some of them may think, okay, I'm 16,
Yeah.
17 now. It might be that in 3, 4 years' time, I might not be experiencing any of those issues. Hopefully, things will level out. But those questions have been asked, and we do get the odd one that crops up. I think the recent one at Epic
Yeah.
was mentioned very recently, and they went, "Wow, that's quite a significant amount of people." And it is sad because this is people's
Mm.
livelihoods. This is their occupations that people are surviving on this,
Totally.
and it's such a shame. But there's an important way that we try to tackle it, especially with young people. That it's not it's just being aware of what's going on in the world around you, and it is important. Sometimes it's scary to read the news and see what's going on, but it's good to know what's happening.
Yeah.
um, I think the best way I'd seen it recently is that what's important is going on with is more looking at awareness and not fear of
Yeah.
it.
I mean, the way I'm looking at it is that I think there are two separate things going on. There's one which looking at the kind of the market condition and saying, why am I wanting to do a games course? And if the reason I want to do a games course is because you don't have anything better to do, or you think there'll be commercial opportunities and so on and so forth, and you're not really thinking about engaging with games itself, I think you're in the same problem you would have had anyway, which is,
Mhm.
the reason for doing a games course is because you need to make games. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's another aspect to that. I mean, I think that I think that anyone who wants to make games knows that this has to be it's going to be a competitive environment. It's going to be tricky.
Mhm.
You're not going to be making the revenue that you're going to be making if you're an accountant or a lawyer. But
Yeah,
that's not why you want to do it. You want it because there's creativity. Now, I think the problem we have is that a lot of the people who are looking at it and they're being put off by the questions of current cultural climate is often that they're people who like playing games.
yeah,
I don't think that's the same thing. So I wonder if, in some ways, there's kind of a filter happening, which is, oh, games industry is having challenge, and it is scary for a lot of people, and it's true. There is a lot of risk. We've lost 50,000 jobs, blah 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 blah. And doesn't mean you're going to get a job in games. There are currently more graduates for games than there are jobs.
yeah,
Um, there are also a lot more people unemployed waiting to try to fill a job and willing to take junior positions in order to just get back into games. But I think there's also something more fundamental about working out what the course you're doing is offering in terms of its
hmm
fundamentals. I think if you abstract the end goal of making a game from what I think is more interesting about the purpose of getting education, for me, education about skill sets. And
yeah,
I think what's beautiful about games is that we can go into the technology side, we can go into the coding side, and we can work out logic. It's the same fundamental principles of coding anything, but you get to code something you can enjoy doing.
of
And I
course.
think that's
Yeah,
valuable.
I think we sit in quite a vast area within games
We
because
do.
so much of it is transferable.
Yeah.
So I've had students who have studied with us and they've done programming, but
Yeah.
they've not gone into games. They've
No,
gone into
exactly.
cybersecurity. And I mean, it's wicked. We had another student as well who did a bit of 3D modeling with us, studied media, and then went off to do VFX and
Yeah.
animation at
Yeah.
university. And I mean, that's
I'm
if
aware of some people who've ended up creating like 3D models of furniture.
that's the thing. Yeah, you could do
Yeah.
Unreal and
Yeah.
Unity in even in your free time, or even Blender, for
Yeah.
example, and then you'll end up doing marketing
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
tech and
Yeah.
design,
Totally.
for example, and interior design. So it is transferable, and I think it's important for people to realise that even if they study games, it's not a foregone conclusion. You have to go within that industry. It opens up so many
So many
doors
doors. Yeah.
that you can work within.
And I think,
It's even if you were to study, yeah, like audio, for
yeah. Oh,
example,
exactly.
you could be an audio engineer and then work in
Yeah.
games, and you weren't originally from that field. So it does work nicely in whichever favour you're
Yeah.
in and what you want to
I
chase.
think that's the really key here is that there's so many specializations in games, and it's the ability to work with other people in other disciplines, which I think,
hmm
I think something profound about being. I mean, I'm a designer. I mean, but I am also a trained marketeer. I was an amateur game maker, and I happened to be trained in marketing. And then later, as I was designing software tools for making, operating game services, I realized I was doing the same job. And, I'm sat in PlayStation working on a virtual world called PlayStation Home, and I'm realizing the job I'm doing is basically a design job. And
Yeah,
it took me a long time to accept that I was a game designer. Now I
yeah,
can't stop myself. I have to think about it from that point of view. Um, but everyone else is going to have their own calling, and I think the ability, the exposure you get when you're sat there and you're working with a coder who works at the high end of game engine coding, who's
hmm
looking at how lighting operates and the physics involved in that process in order to ensure that you get the best possible looking experience in the engine of the game. That's phenomenal. And the fact that
yeah.
you can
It's
engage
crazy what people can do.
and
Yeah.
you can engage with those people, and with between you and them and the artist and narrator and whatever else, we can tell a story.
hmm
But it takes all of us to make the best experience and the best story.
Yeah, I think it's collaboration,
Yeah.
and I think the biggest sense that I found through working in this industry is certainly community.
Mm.
I think every time, and it's sad when I say it, every time I see someone say we've been caught by the cuts
Yeah.
and layoffs in the industry, someone's popped it on LinkedIn. Next thing you know, someone's reshared it, and someone said, "Look, this person is wicked at what they do. If you need them for programmer, level designer, environments, etc., hire this
Yeah.
person." And there's so much support out there, but it's a lot of it is not always what you studied.
Mm.
I know it obviously sounds ironic coming from the guy that's running a games course, but sometimes it's what you can also show as
Yeah.
well. That it's just that portfolio building. If you're going to sit there and you're actually going to make games, stick 'em online,
Yeah.
show off exactly what you can do, because we are in a competitive world.
Yeah.
Massively. I think when I started out in game design, and this is going back early 2010s, that was when game design courses weren't very
Or there
common.
weren't really game design courses, I would argue, but then I'm bitter and write
Yeah.
books on the subject. But
Yeah.
it's it was a lot of the early courses where I got to sort of guest lecture on weren't covering things like game economy design. They weren't covering how mechanics work. You were doing a level, and you were doing, and so it's basically mostly an art. I mean, level design is not
Yeah.
equal to art. I know, but it was largely an artist thing, or a learning to do C# coding so you could use Unity, or something like that. It
Mhm.
was less about how the purity of how a mechanic allows an interaction, and that interaction allows a response and a feedback and a narrative to emerge. Those sorts of things weren't there in the early days as much as they are now.
Yeah.
There's been huge improvements, I think, in that side. Although,
Yeah, I think curriculums are so
yeah,
diverse now,
mm,
massively. You look at some universities like
yeah,
Staffordshire. I'm going to sing the praises because I'm a master's student with them, and
yeah,
there's some of the stuff they do is
yeah,
wicked. But the achievements and the raw
yeah,
talent that some of these students are producing, it still gives people
yeah.
faith.
I was in the Staff London campus a few weeks ago and gave a talk about monetization design, and it's kind of the response and the questions, and that having, again, this is whichever campus you're on, whichever games course you're on, when you get to have industry veterans like me sit there and talk to you and be willing to answer questions, it's phenomenal when you see the talent actually asking the hard questions. So,
Mhm.
why is this particular game mechanic used? Because it's annoying me, and why are we so focused on money or not? I'm actually quite surprised how it's shifted from a kind of artistic purism about games to a more grounded balance between commercial and artistry. I'm a bit worried sometimes. I hear people going a bit hearing me talk about commercial side and assuming I'm just the money grabbing, moustache twiddling guy. But the point for me is actually knowing how the systems work, and how they tell
Yeah.
stories, and how you make players care, and how you make players who care want to spend money with you, is all part of a way of thinking that can actually apply to any industry. You think about
That's
banking,
transferable.
you
Yeah.
think about, I don't know, charity work. We still have these pipelines of user experience to think about.
Oh, I can't agree. I can't agree with you more. Like I said, it's all the transferable
Yeah.
skills, and it's that transferable subjects. And again, the amount of courses that you can find out there that support all manner of
Mm.
subjects. I remember it just used to be years ago that if you were to do a degree in games, you're looking at just games
Yeah.
design. Now you're looking at games audio and games mechanics. There's something for everyone.
There is. No, there is. And
Yeah,
working, and again, so we're in an era we can't ignore the two letters that seem to come up in every conversation. Um, you know,
yeah,
AI is a thing, and
yeah.
it's interesting, because we're in a we we need to have some nuance to the debate, I think,
Mhm.
and the reason I feel like I can have that nuance is because I've got friends of mine who've had literally voice actors who've had their voices stolen, which is completely unacceptable, inappropriate.
Wow.
It's appalling. It's appalling.
Yeah.
That being said, there isn't just one form of AI. And if you're in an environment as somebody who's starting to learn where you're going to go, and you're going to try to use the tools that are appropriate to use and still make things, well, you need the skills to make things.
Mhm.
Even if you end up using some AI tools to help you speed up the process, you can't
Yeah.
you can't produce a game and release it if you haven't got handmade code at some level, because
Mhm.
it's unsupportable. It,
Yeah, it's a again, within that is a very, very weird
yeah,
precipice that we're kind of living in at the
yeah,
moment. I'm really quite surprised actually, because at the moment, obviously with AI slowly starting to become quite a bit of a, I don't want to say threat in some ways. I think it has its place in the
It
world.
does bring threats with it. There's no question.
Yes, absolutely. I'm quite surprised how anti-AI some of my students have been, and you know, especially towards art.
No, I
And
get
I
it.
totally agree with them.
Well,
Yeah, and I cannot agree any more with them. I think it has its places. Certainly within some industries. I think medicine, I think it's absolutely wicked. The things that it could do to try and help people.
Yeah. But let's use
But
the art one as an example. So we had Getty have a court case in the UK because their art resources, their art library, was being used by, I forgot which one of the AIs it was, but it was used by one of the AI systems to learn. So much so that the AI was producing images which had the Getty watermark in them.
oh wow.
And that case should have been a slam dunk. But because the company that was doing the collection was in the US and the court case was being brought by the UK, that floundered. If I've understood correctly, some lawyer listening will tell me I've got that wrong, but that's okay. But the point is that should have been a slam dunk, in my opinion. You've stolen images. You have to be held accountable for stealing images. And I think that's completely reasonable. So my issue here is, am I don't know the answer. I don't know where I sit yet. I do think that for me, I can create art I couldn't have created. Now, the art I would want to create would be narrative because I'm like to think of myself as a bit of an amateur writer, but I could produce material, produce game materials, and also, story materials that I couldn't have done before. That is exciting. But am I doing that at the cost of the fact that there would have been people who would have charged for that work? Well, I'd never have made that work. In fact, I still aren't making that work. That's another subject. I would never have been able to make any work at all. So is it better that I could create art using these tools? And then you're sat with an artist, and for them, they're going, but that's not art. That's a prompt. The art is when an artist does the work.
It's such a strange kind of, it's almost like a void.
It's a valid
kind of
problem, I think,
tapping.
largely because and again, I'm going to come back to commercial side. I think the commercial model is all screwed up. People aren't getting to hold on to the rights they should have. And other people are getting rich off the rights that other people have had taken from them. I think that's fundamentally I think that's where I'm sitting at the moment in terms of my kind of concern about it. Yeah.
I think it's quite tricky. I think when it comes to education, it's in the rise of it in, I think it was 2023, I think is when it started to become quite a mainstream thing. That all these policies were coming into place from awarding bodies to ensure that students' work is their own. They're not just getting like AI to complete everything for them, because it's not a demonstration of skills for you to use AI, in my opinion. And I'm sure someone's going to be out there to to disagree with that one. But for us, or at least the way I like to see it is, it's great to help with prototyping.
100%.
When you get to actually building,
at least,
absolutely. When you do that, great. When you're going for the full thing, it doesn't have its place.
But the reason I brought it up was actually less about talking about the issue, because obviously we do talk about the issue a lot. It's more that I think that for people who, if we assume there's a level of AI that will be somewhat inevitable, and hopefully in the process, a lot of the unethical practices are eliminated, and appropriate levels appropriate levels of recompense are sorted. Now, I know that's very optimistic of me to say that, but let's take that assumption for now to make it easy to have the conversation. The people who will be able to make the most of that technology are going to be the people who actually understand how systems work. They have to understand what is art, what is the nature of the communication of imagery, what is the nature of communication of an action in a game, what is the nature of the process of a narrative story. And I think that's where I don't think, well, it's where I think the reality of what we want as humans is human stories. And I think unless we have the training to understand how to make those human
Yeah.
stories in whichever medium we're choosing, then the whole value is lost anyway. We end up with the AI slop, and you can hear it in a heartbeat. When,
Yeah.
how many YouTube videos go something along the lines of, and that's when the strange thing happened.
Yeah. Do you
Why?
know what? It's really, like I said, it's really interesting
Yeah.
how strongly opinionated some of my
Mm.
students are. I think it's definitely great as a tool. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be there to replace. And we, I kind of joke about it really, but we have our own AI we use in
Yeah.
class. It's called authentic intelligence,
Okay.
and I
As in
mean,
the other
it shouldn't
people.
replace you. You know what I mean? Yeah, if you're coming in, we
Yeah.
want to see
I think
authenticity
that's fair.
in its truest form. If you think when I was on the course, when I studied games years and years ago, AI was a thing, but it was like, for example,
Yeah.
NPCs. They're wandering around the world. You think of things like Grand Theft
Yeah.
Auto, they're taxi drivers
Yeah.
and just people in the world. They were there. That was artificial intelligence for us. It's
But it's a
now
different
thrown
thing.
so much.
It was
Yeah,
programmatic behavior rather than predictive behavior, and I think
exactly. It
that's the
had its
difference. Yeah.
place. And suddenly it's like it seeped into various different
Yeah.
corners of the gaming or the development process that,
But I think where I'm coming from
yeah,
is
we
that,
don't want it to then, yeah,
just where I was coming with it is that I think I raised it because I think it's something where people will often use it as a reason. Well, why should I bother going into a game design course? Why should I bother going into getting,
yeah.
trained in these things? And I actually think that what it is for me is even more reason why you should get proper training and understanding.
Absolutely. Yeah. Things like problem solving,
Yeah,
collaboration, digital
yeah,
production, and I'm actually understanding a pipeline from start to finish.
exactly.
AI can tell you
Yeah,
what it would entail, but it's never going to give you that full demonstration of what is the
yeah,
process, how do you start, where do you start,
yeah,
and if anything, it takes away that
yeah,
experience. We as teachers, we work very, very hard to ensure that if you're signing up to something, essentially, a course is a service, it's a
yeah,
product. We're going to refine it. We're going to want to make it better every single year to ensure that if you're going to experience it,
yeah,
it is its absolute
yeah,
best and having as much authenticity in it as possible to ensure you have the best time
yeah,
studying.
yeah,
And that's how it should be. What's the point of studying something if you're not really going to enjoy it? And I mean, I interview students every week at the moment, and I sit there and I say to them, it's not like when you're in school.
yeah,
You have to do English, you've got to do maths. That's great if you love those subjects and you've chased them. That's wicked
yeah,
because everyone's got those interests. But I say to these new generations of kids, and I'm like, there's not many people that can say you're going to make games every
yeah.
day or you're going to work towards these projects. And that's a really special thing to say that you're going to be involved in that. You've grown up with games. Now it's your
But
turn.
even just using a game as a vehicle for learning, I mean, let's face it, I even wrote Costa back in the Theory of Fun, the original kind of go-to must-read if you ever want to be a designer,
Yeah,
talked about games as patterns, games and patterns as learning mechanisms. That
absolutely.
dopamine payoff, that the particular form we get in games, the responsive one, is about learning and realizing that we can create these loops with great start conditions, challenges, resolutions, rewards, and build
Yeah.
emotional journeys within that. That to me is fascinating, and it applies to the learning process as much as it applies to what you make as you're learning.
Absolutely. And I think it's such an interesting experience. It's everyone should have the opportunity to be able to learn something from start to finish. No one's gonna be perfect. You know what I mean? That's why there's education. And even now, like I said, I'm doing a master's
Okay.
course. Like I'm going back into education again, and it's great to be able to learn things that I didn't get the chance to learn years ago. And our students, or if any student, to be honest with you, should have at least experience of networking, those communication skills, those soft
Oh yeah.
skills that every person needs to have. And I mean, I've got to admit, we've got the best networking thing, like events. You think GDLX,
Yeah.
you've just had that
It was
recently. You
fantastic.
think of
Yeah.
EGX, We've had WASD and X-Ray. All of them are absolutely
Well,
wicked.
right now,
And
at
it's,
the time of recording, we've got the London Game Festival going on with a whole
yes, of
series
course.
of connected events.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's about video
Yeah,
games.
but again,
Like it's fantastic. And I think if there's any place to ever go do some networking, it's these sort of
I
events.
do think we're still lacking a little bit of acceptance that we're part of the culture, despite the fact we're the second largest form of digital entertainment on the planet. Actually, no, we are the single largest form of digital entertainment on the planet.
We
Yeah,
make more money than
yeah,
Hollywood and the music
exactly.
industry combined.
It,
It's
it we have to be
crazy
a
amount
bit
of
careful
money we
because
make.
we're not. I think we're bigger than box office plus music combined. We
Yes.
fluctuate whether we're bigger than home. Actually, I think home entertainment is still technically larger because home entertainment includes domestic television. Domestic television is still
Of course, yeah.
surprisingly big.
Yeah.
But but that aside, we are an industry which has had a massive hike during COVID because what did people do when they were unable to work properly? Well, they played games. Of course they did. Then they went back to work. Of course they played less games. So the net effect is we had a dive in terms of the numbers. But what
Mhm.
that did, instead of people going sensibly, we have a current uplift, it's going to go down. Let's plan for that. Everyone was building their forecast based on this growth is going to go on forever because growth in games always went on forever. But this was the first time, and I think it particularly hit mobile, but I think it had a wider effect.
Yeah.
There are reasons why it particularly hit mobile. I've bored people on the subject. I'm not going to bore you on it. But the point being is that now you look back and we're now back at the same growth rate we were before COVID.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's even though COVID was 6 years
Yeah.
ago now. Like that, it's
Don't even
mad to think how
start
fast
me.
it's
Yeah,
been.
that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm so old.
I mean, like, oh my goodness, well, it's 6 years,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's that post-pandemic
Yeah.
overexpansion, and we've seen it many
We're
a
still
times.
there. We're still dealing with
Student,
it.
yeah, and studios, sorry, were investing in companies, building them up, and then shutting them
But
down.
it's not that long
And it's
ago
such
since
a
Epic
shame.
just laid off 1,000 odd people. Um,
It was last
yeah,
month.
exactly.
Yes, yeah.
And if you think about it that way, it's like it's still feeling the repercussions. But I think what we're seeing is less of a. Well, I don't think we still have a lack of investment, but again, this week at the time of recording, there were announcements about the UK Games Fund getting, I think, 30 million to be
Yes,
distributed, which is
yeah.
really phenomenal. That includes, if I understand correctly, grants for students and also for prototyping.
Mhm.
We've always been really bad at prototyping. I still think we have problems with games funding. I still think we're under supported compared to if you look at the revenue as an industry we deliver to the
Yeah,
economy versus film and TV. I think we are undervalued. I would argue, but then I'm biased. I know I'm biased.
yeah,
But now we have new SIC codes for SIC codes is a trade industry code to allow the government to track us better. Now we have that.
yeah.
Hopefully that will improve. But the point is, we do still need to find ways to help new people get started, to try things out, to be able to take risks. And unfortunately, we don't have what they have in film and television. There's a thing called a pre-sale in film and television where
Mhm.
the creator will be paid at pre-sale for the work they did. When you make a game, you don't get paid for the work you did. You only get revenue share from the revenue generated. So
Mhm.
we're not sold to a publisher. We might get money for further development of the game, but unlike other industries, we're not getting that kind of periodic update. Now, okay, I'm not very familiar with how film and television works, so I might be misrepresenting that.
Mhm.
But the point is that as a student, you're going in and a lot of the burden is on you. If you're going to find a job, you're going to make your own game, you've got to put a lot of investment in. There are game studios out there spending tens of millions every month on advertising their games. And you're
Yeah.
supposed to get your little game working. And you're supposed to get that working in a context where all the algorithms are being wired up so only the big people get new users. I mean, again, I'm paraphrasing. It's incredibly hard. And then to add to that, we've got government bodies adding regulation to us. So it sounds like I'm being down on the industry, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
what I think I'm trying to say is that all that might be true, but we still get these crazy breakouts. We still get people honing their craft, creating beautiful stories where you do find that there'll be um, a VC, or there might be an angel who would go, "That's actually really good."
Yeah.
There will be a community that will get it. And building your portfolio, realizing that games is a marathon, not a sprint. I think that's the crux of it. And how do you get there? Well, if you don't spend time investing in the skills,
Do you know what? I'm currently writing a
yeah,
paper on this, on industry influence
yeah,
towards further
yeah,
education, and we do our absolute best. I think we've got a bit of an advantage being here in Cambridge because we've got our partners. We've got things like pieces like Ninja
yeah,
Theory.
yeah.
We've got Frontier Developments. We've got
We've got
Jagex.
Jagex, yeah.
All of them, they are our
Mm,
neighbours. So we're really, really lucky to be so close to these major companies
mm,
that have that influence to come in, speak to our learners, share their experience, share the stories,
yeah.
networking, collaboration, all of the soft skills that you can imagine.
And a
But
lot of those
then,
people in those teams really want to give back. David at Frontier,
yeah,
I know Phil's left Jagex now, but that team were all really supportive of local education as well.
without a doubt, we're very lucky, and I think partly because of how long I've been in
Mm.
education, and I'm going to say their names because they are absolutely wicked. Taylor, Sean, and
Yeah,
Ashton were three different generations of students
yeah,
that studied with us, all went to
yeah,
university. They're now working all at QA or within the QA area within
yeah.
Frontier. They now come back and support our learners
Great.
in the seats they once
Love it.
sat in. And I mean, that's just
Well,
beautiful.
and
Like I'm really proud of them because they can then share their experience and
exactly.
stories to the students to then inspire the next
Yeah.
round.
And
Do
I
you know what I
mean,
mean?
I've
And we
been
should have
around.
more of
No, we
that.
should. But also, people, in my position, I, there is nothing like sitting there and, I mean, I like doing training anyway, but I think anyone who's got experience in the industry, who has the willingness to go and spend time with, folks like yourself. I would like to say I was up with the staff's campus a few weeks
Mhm.
ago. I was in University of Surrey on the psychology in games course just before Christmas, and then later on with the game design course. So it's at last there's two game design courses in Guildford. Guildford being the home of games, and they didn't have one, but now they've got two great ones. And so I've done lectures on both those, and also UCA where we had the game dev local and Andy Bussam and the team there, and I sat and all the others doing the games course there. Oh my God, the talent. When you sit there with a bunch of people who
Yeah.
genuinely get it and
Mm.
genuinely want to do amazing things. There was a small team in Farnham who'd just done the Global Game Jam, and I was giving them a lecture on, okay, so you've done the game, what next? So I was talking about
Yeah.
validating game ideas. I was talking about monetization. I was talking about what do you want to do if you're going to form a company, all this kind of stuff. And the appetite for this kind of information is enormous. And
Yeah.
I thoroughly recommend if you're a games industry veteran, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing the response from people who genuinely want to pick your brains.
Without a doubt. Like I said, the research I'm currently going into this is so many
Yeah.
industry are supporting HE. And I can see why, because they're the ones that are going to feed straight into employment and are going to be the ones that are going to be rubbing shoulders with. I personally, and I'm going to throw a bit of bias out here on this, I feel like further education, so sixth forms and
Yeah.
colleges, seem to be missed out in a
Yeah,
way
that's fair.
sometimes by the industry
Yeah.
involvement. I don't know if it's partly because of the age group, because then they were off to HE afterwards, but FE just seems to
But
be,
you're
yeah,
unusual in that group. There's a couple of friends of mine, like a friend at Northampton who did the sixth form for a long time as well. He had me and various other people like me up into the sixth form group. There's a sixth form college in West London near Bow. I've forgotten the name of the establishment, but my goodness, the talent in those groups are amazing,
yeah,
and it's changed since my first went into Northampton probably 10 years ago. to when I was last in an FE place, which probably was last year. Um, I went from seeing people who went, "Oh, is game design a thing?" to me seeing games that were of a game jam equivalent that I've only seen in the most professional teams.
Yeah. It's crazy. We had a student, and I'm really pleased to say this actually because it was announced a few hours earlier
Yeah,
today. One of our previous students here at
yeah,
CRC, um, amazing stuff. Released an Xbox game, went fully
fantastic,
commercial, BAFTA nominated.
brilliant.
I think the work that they produced when we had industry actually come in at expos, they came in and they saw their work and they were like, "This is like a third year uni
Mm,
student."
mm,
They've now won the Yuki Game Jam for the
fantastic,
second year in a row,
fantastic.
and I mean the raw, like you said, the talent is absolutely unbelievable. And I think with that in itself, I think anyone should be able to see, do you know what? The industry's been a bit of a rocky state.
Yeah,
Absolutely. But I tell you what, if you put your mind to it, you can be that person
yeah,
that's been complimented by industry
yeah.
professionals to go, I want to be you. And that's
Mm.
inspiring. And I think we need to hold on to that for these young
We
people.
absolutely do, and I think the trick is this: is that yes, the industry's having a hard time, no question about it. I don't know when it's going to come clear. It is better than it was last year, but it's not. We're not clear and dry yet.
Yeah.
Last year, I thought it was better than the year before, but then we had a couple of other larger scale redundancies,
Mhm.
so I think we were on a bit of an even keel last year. But I did start seeing investors. So we're lucky; we're making a tech thing called Arcanix, and our VC happens to be the most active for games in Europe, and
Mhm.
they've just signed a whole bunch of games. One of which, not student games, but I mean, they happen to have signed a game called Roadside Research that sold 500,000 copies in a few weeks. It's like, sorry,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, something like that. Enormous success for a small indie studio. And this is a team that were basically running out of money. They had 9 months left, and then they managed to pull out the bag an amazing, amazing game. So these things can still happen, but how do you address it? I
Yes.
think that getting the education is step one. You mentioned it already.
Mhm.
Networking, step two. I think there's some. I mean, you've got to be a bit careful because there's a lot of people who will take the Mickey, but volunteering can be really powerful, and that could
Yeah.
be, say, the Pocket Gamer events, the developer events, and so on and so forth. Why would you do that? What's the value in it? I think there's lots of value being seen, being keen, and also being able to listen in on in the appropriate way on the
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the dialogue that's going on in the industry. Being at an event, being in the back of the room while there's a panel going on talking about something that's happening in the industry, finding the faces of the people and then going up and asking them the question.
Absolutely. I can't agree with you more. I think we're at a weird point, especially within further education. It's building upon that
Yeah,
confidence
it's
and
all
building upon
confidence.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think you do get quite a few anxious people,
of
and
course you do.
that's totally fine, absolutely
Post
fine. But
COVID,
then,
of course you do.
yeah, we're now experiencing that. We're
Yeah,
now seeing those, unfortunately, that generation of learners that went from year 6 to year
yeah,
7, and they missed that
mm,
transition, and that's a massive
yeah.
thing for kind of jumping up to a brand new up to secondary school and that huge transition. That we're now at that point where we're starting to experience that and see that here. So having these networking events and being surrounded by other people and other like-minded people that have got the same interests as you and ambitions, with that we can win them over.
Yeah.
With that we can really support them and really help them land, hopefully in a place they really want to be in.
Exactly. And I think, we as a society haven't really adjusted to the social media age and its impact on us culturally.
Yeah,
I'm not as anti social media as some people. In fact, I'm not at all. I am aware, though, you can't deny that there have been some impacts in terms of confidence, and they can't deny there have been impacts in terms of
oh yeah,
um, how people respond. Now, a lot of people say that there's a drop in attention. I think there's something in that, but actually, just look at some of the ways that they might be consuming short form content, but they might be
yeah,
doing that short form content for hours. And again, that sounds like I'm talking about wasting your time. I'm not. I'm talking about experiences that are meaningful to those people. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to be judging what cultural value of one art form versus another. But I don't believe it's a case of people not having the capacity for attention. I think it's the attractiveness of immediacy is there.
Mhm.
We're not creating spaces potentially for people to enjoy longer form experiences. But you can look at longer form video on YouTube, and that is just as popular as it used to be. In fact, if anything, videos are getting longer. So
Yes, I totally agree with you. I'm watching like
yeah,
documentaries now on YouTube.
literally,
It's such a
it
yeah.
exactly. I get to watch content I would never have got to watch because someone would have got in the way of that being a thing that I could have watched. Okay, mostly mine's science, skeptic, geek out stuff, but that's another subject. But the point I'm trying to get to here is, um, how do you make people feel like they're in a comfortable, safe space? How do you make them feel like the value is there? And I think that um, what you get a lot of people to complain about university. There's a lot of cost, which is
Yeah.
something I completely think is economically stupid. I didn't get a grant, so I was the last. In fact, no, I think technically I got my first year of my HND because I didn't. As I said, I spent too much time playing D&D. So my first year of my HND was granted. I had a grant for it. I had to pay for everything after that, but I didn't have tutorial fees at that time.
Right.
Now, how much is a tutorial fee for a term?
It's
It's
about nine thousand
£9,000.
pounds,
Yeah,
something
it's
like that. Yeah.
yeah. I thought it was like 3,000 a term or 9,000 a year or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
£9,000 a year. Sorry.
and
Yeah.
then they've got to pay for living. And then they got to pay. Even when I didn't have tutorial fees, I had to work 3 days a week just to stay fed because my
Yeah.
family didn't have any money. I had to pay my own way through. I mean, I got some. Don't get me wrong. Don't pull me. I'm not being. I'm not. Don't. No need to play me a tiny violin. But I still ended up in debt. I managed to pay that off. Blah blah blah. I look at my son, and he didn't have to worry about feeding, rent, and stuff like that. But again, enormous amounts of debt. How are you starting off your economy well, where you put the debt of actually getting your trained talent on the person? That to me is insanity. And in
Yeah.
fact, most economists in the world will agree, regardless of politics, there are two things that should be free at the point of gaining, and that's education and healthcare. But we are where we are. Can't change
Yes.
that. What we can change is the fact that the skill sets, transferable skill sets that we're talking about for games are diverse. Whether you're going into an art course, whether you're going into a coding course, or if you're going to a design course, all three of those allow you to do something special, allow you to understand things that will still be valuable even where there are AI tools that come in and dominate that space. Because an artist, it takes an artist to understand what looks right.
Yeah.
It takes an artist to understand the nuance of color and what the color is communicating. It takes a designer to understand the impact of reward on behavior. It takes a writer to understand how to tell stories that have impact, meaning, and resonance. And unless you understand the techniques of writing, we're not going to have the quality of writing. We end up with the AI slot. So, regardless of what tools you're using, whether they're AI or not, the ability to be trained to understand what is good and therefore know what rules you can break,
Hmm.
because it's only when you know what rules you can break that you're good enough to do the job, I would argue.
Yeah.
And that only comes from training, I would argue.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a couple of points I want
Yeah,
to
yeah,
throw to that because it's really good what you've just said. I think that I feel sometimes there's quite a lot of pressure
yeah,
on HE
yeah,
tutors
absolutely.
in a good way. Might I add? I just want to say in a good way that in a sense that, and I think Digital Schoolhouse are doing this a lot
Mm,
now, and they're really pushing for it as their main aim is to try and bring more games dev to the curriculum.
yeah,
which is great because it's not a GCSE subject. The closest you'll probably get to it is within media studies. There might be a
Yeah.
games unit, and it might be, I don't know, you're creating a menu for a theoretical game idea. When students are joining us at FE,
Yeah.
we're at that point where we have to inspire them. We've got to aim this so well that as a vocation, this is the thing that's going to set them up, hopefully, for the rest of their
Yeah.
lives. This is the career they're now
Yeah.
chasing. So there's a lot of pressure on us for us to inspire, get it right, but nurture these developers to being exactly what they want to be. Some of them, mind you, might have grown up and said, I've always wanted to do game design. I've no idea where to start. And they get to about 15 or 16 and they find courses like us and they go, that's what I'll be chasing.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing they're after. So it's ensuring that we get it right for them. Because I feel when they get to university, they're already there. You know, that point you're paying, or sorry, you've got a loan for however many thousands of pounds,
Tens
which
of
is
thousands of
crazy.
pounds.
Yeah, it's thousands of pounds. And if you want to throw in a master's degree on top of that as well,
Yeah.
it's that person is already locked into the thing they're going to do because they've committed thousands of pounds to that thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So at college, you can still bend the rules a little bit. You can still kind of play with exactly where you want to be and who you want to be. So again, it's a lot of pressure on us. And we've had conversations with learners this year where they've said, I don't want to go to university. I don't want to commit to the large amount of debt.
Yeah.
And when we sit down and we say to them, the typical, you're only going to pay it off when you hit a certain amount. It will then write itself apparently after a certain period of time. And unfortunately, that puts people off and they go, I'm going to go on a gap year. And I mean, if you go on a gap year, we've lost you.
Yeah. Almost.
And it's such a shame. And suddenly that talent is just disappeared.
Exactly.
And that's such a shame. But we really try to reassure our students to say, look, the money that you will have to borrow for the degree or your course, yeah, you'll pay it off. But if you end up in a role that you've always wanted to be in, is it really going to matter? Because you're doing exactly what you love. Yeah, you're going to have to pay bills. So everyone's got to pay for fuel and gas, electricity and all that. You throw it in your university degree into the mix as well. So what? You're building games for a living, and hopefully you're going to end up in a really good job that you feel really rewarded in, and you'll be thanking the advice that you have and that career you chased at college to go, do you know what? I'm happy. And I think that's the most important thing that people seem to forget.
Yeah, getting that balance of happiness is really, but what I don't want to do is make people think that it's not a job. It is a job. A lot of people,
yeah, without a doubt.
particularly in the larger teams, you might not feel like you're making a game. You might feel like you're just doing it your 9 to 5. I mean, thankfully, most games companies aren't like that, but there are some where you can feel like you're just doing a job. I mean, I worked in telcos as the games guy for years, and it was obviously a very weird having a corporate culture, but you're the games guy. That was a bit kind of a weird one. But where I think I'd like to take this a little bit further is, if you think about it, is you know, particularly the FE kind of level, the chance to be able to indulge yourself in something like game development or like game design is entertaining, fun, and rewarding. And also at the same time gives you something which can be reutilized if you decide you're going to go down, you know, more pure coding route. If you discover that as part of your exposure to all of these other techniques, audio, retail, marketing, community, QA, development, code, art, the science of it all, because, you know, there are physics, maths, etc. involved in some aspects of the process. Writing, amazingly important part of a game. Not every game, but I think every game, but not always as overtly as you might think. But all of those, the fact of if you're at an FE level and you're making games as part of game jams and working with other people in a team, building your confidence and understanding the subject matter that appeals to you and the flexibility that subject matter can incorporate, because we can make a game about moving bricks, we can make a game about football, we can make a game about, I don't know, Tudor religious wars. why not? And
Exactly.
that to me is joyful. So I think the chance of grabbing this early on to find out A, does it fit? B, are you got the mindset for it? C, I think that for somebody who wants to get into games, to make games, the difference between making and playing. I think you have to. I mean, for me, cut me, I bleed game. I am only because I only feel grounded when I'm doing something creative and game making wise. Despite the fact that I spend most of my career as a product owner or talking about how to make money out of games,
Mhm.
that's not the bit that makes me satisfied. It's the fact that I'm involved with helping and supporting people who want to make successful games.
Yeah.
Anyway, that being said, once you've got that baseline, then you can choose to go and do another discipline. Now, that might be a full on games uni course, or it might be the coding course, and you still continue on to make games. Or it could
Yeah.
be a fine art course. In fact, actually, weirdly, having non directly game related courses can also be good. Because
Yeah.
you want a broad, you want that, you might end up making that Tudor religious war game. Maybe you want a history degree. I'm not saying the point for me is understanding what does a course do for you, and for me, it's about learning to think.
Yeah.
I think learning to think and learning to be critical, learning to evaluate, learning to prioritize is probably more important than a specific subject, and that pays off because the game industry is terrible at training juniors to seniors. And
Okay. Yeah.
mostly because we don't have large enough teams to be able to invest in HR training departments, L&D departments. I don't think that's a good thing, by the way. I think there's a real problem in the industry. We need
Mhm.
professional development plans. We need to have some way of having government give tax incentives for companies to be able to use accreditation of going to events and things like that. That's my personal view. But anyway, subject being is if
Yeah.
you go in having done a FE level a games course and then done a degree in something, and then you get into your game environment, well, you've already shown a level of capacity to adapt, to think on your
Yes.
feet, and especially if you deliver a game to a store, you know what's in that last 2% of the game development process that seems to take up 80% of the time.
Hmm.
That knowledge, that experience of actually shipping something actually does a lot to profoundly prepare you for the next thing. And whatever you're
Without a
chucked
doubt.
into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's for me personally, although I teach a bit of programming level design and stuff, the actual production and the publishing of games, I
Yeah.
love. And I remember being inspired to do it when I was studying at
Mm.
college. And for me, I thought, I've got a taste for it. I want it more.
Yeah.
And suddenly you scratch that itch and you go, I really like this. And I've sat in a position where I publish games,
Yeah.
and then I've then sat in the position where I'm supporting learners with publishing their games,
Yeah.
and I love it because suddenly they're feeling what I then felt.
Yeah.
Last summer, we had a learner who produced a wicked, gravity-defying, flipping platformer
Yeah.
game in Unity. It was brilliant, absolutely loved it. And I just said, by any chance, would you like to give this go on an Xbox console? And we actually deploy it
Yeah.
to a console. And he went, yeah, go on, why not?
Dawn.
And yeah, it was like, go on
Yeah.
then. And I sat him in the room. I went through the process. I showed him how to get it from screen to console.
Yeah.
Um, and it went well, a few issues, as they normally would do. And
Yeah.
he then started work on changing them. About a week later, I sat with him again and I said, right, I'll go through the process with it. He went, I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to do it on my own.
Fantastic.
I went, right, okay,
That's awesome.
I'll leave you to it. And then every day after that, I left him to it. He got himself set up. And I remember we actually got through to the point of certification for
Fantastic.
Xbox. And I was so pleased because I was like, right, okay, we're going to look at pricing. We're going to look at demographics. We're going to look at storefront pages. And he goes, right, okay, I'm going to have this, this, this. And he started preparing
Yeah.
everything. And
And that's
bless
not
him, we got,
simple. My goodness. Anyone who doesn't know,
it's a lot to go
but
through.
the
Yeah.
UX on those back-end platforms for Microsoft and PlayStation, and I mean,
Yeah.
I've got the dev kits behind me. To go through that certification process is a nightmare, and the UX is
Yeah.
terrible. It's like you would never let a consumer have to go through such obscurely badly written
I know.
workflows.
It's good, but bad in a way. I
Yeah,
think the great thing is we get to see what's under the
yeah,
cover. But then when it comes to the actual consumer itself, they go, yeah, it's just a typical marketplace. But it's that thing, it's that little nugget that
yeah,
the students and young people seem to miss out on. It's the actual publication of their
yeah.
games. We went through about 30 different 30 different final builds of that game
I'm
before
shocked
we
not.
finally had it. I know it took flipping
Yeah,
ages to do it. And eventually we sent the final one off. We had a release date and it was during our end of year showcase last
yeah,
June. And I checked throughout all of the day, and I was like, it still hasn't appeared. I'm really sorry. You can show it on our dev kit. You've got a build of it there, but the actual commercial bit, I don't know where it is. 6 o'clock that evening, I happened to go on the Xbox app, and it was there. And while he was at his penultimate showcase of his time with us,
yeah.
the game went live, and
Fantastic.
suddenly he was a commercial game developer,
100%.
and he was 17.
Love it.
Oh no,
Love it.
sorry, no, he was just about to turn 17. Sorry, he's now involved in the team
Yeah,
in a team that has produced our first, and I think the country's first college Nintendo Switch game.
fantastic.
And I mean, he's now building a mobile game.
Love it.
And I mean, it's that raw talent where I'm going to try a bit of
Yeah,
everything because he'll walk into any university because he's willing to put his mind to it
yeah,
and willing to try everything. And it's that competitiveness, it's that
yeah.
raw ambition. For me, that's what's going to get you in this world. Some people, some people struggle with it, but I think they're the ones that are really going to fly, and you can tell that from the off.
And to my mind, it's a case of what I think our job as veterans is to reassure people who are doing it for the first time that it's changing all the time. We're always trying to work out how to do it. Even though I've done various stuff, I've got games on Xbox, on PlayStation. I worked on PlayStation 3. I've done mobile stuff. I've done PC stuff. I've worked in all sorts of spaces. Most of the time, I'm not the one doing it. I'm just telling someone else to do it. When you have to go
Yeah,
back and work out how to do it from scratch, you're learning again. Everybody's constantly learning again.
yeah,
And the thing to be, is not, it's don't be afraid of that. It's okay to feel a bit lost. There is
yeah,
plenty of tools and support out there. There are plenty of, you can ask Claude or whatever. But no, that was a joke, by the way, in case it was most that was mostly a joke. But there are YouTube clips, there are various other people, there are if you've done your networking, you can ask someone, and actually there are the support teams on those platforms who are often very
yeah,
helpful. I can never give enough credit to the Epic Store guys because of the way they supported us when we were putting a game up. They were fantastic.
brilliant.
But my point is that we want the games to work.
Yeah,
Everybody wants your game to work. And if you get out there and you put it out there, test it, get it in front of people.
yeah,
And if it doesn't work, that's okay. How on earth do you learn everything? How did you learn to walk?
yeah.
You learned to walk by
I think it's
falling
the
over.
anxiety of sharing
Yeah,
work, and I think some people are really scared of that. And I think, unfortunately, that's
yeah,
a barrier. They're like, "Oh my god, someone is going to absolutely
yeah,
tear into my project." We have that all the time. When I remember years ago, we had someone from PlayStation come in, and he was the loveliest guy
yeah,
in the world, right? And all of our students were like, "Oh my god, someone from PlayStation's coming in. They're going to come and tear our games apart. We're 16 years old. We should be doing." And suddenly, all of that pressure fell on
yeah,
those students, and they were panicking. And when our contact came in, he was nothing but lovely.
yeah.
He said, "Right, I think maybe you could do this," and he just gave praise. And suddenly, the air of the classroom, they just went, "Ah." That wasn't so bad after
No,
all.
exactly.
And suddenly they're like, right, I can't wait for them to come in again. So it's that anxiety that I think is there that
Yeah,
sometimes, but sometimes you don't know if you don't try. And I think more people need to try and give that a go
yeah,
and try
totally.
and trust the process.
And also to forgive themselves for not being perfect from day one. It's okay.
Absolutely.
None of
Everyone's
us
learning.
are.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm actually going through it again now. For
Yeah,
the first time in over a decade, I'm now going through and building another commercial game.
yeah.
I've not done it for a long, long time, and I've got a testing period coming up very soon. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm like, because I've worked in games for so long,
Yeah,
I feel like there's a bit of pressure on me now to make sure I actually get it right. And I'm like, oh my goodness, because you think, so students, like, you are the master, you are
yeah. Oh
the
no,
best
totally.
there is. And it was like, I'm not, but it's almost like a pressure to think you've got to make sure that your standard of work is going to
Yeah,
be to what the students would expect if they were to see you do it. You know what I mean? A very Mr. Miyagi sort of
yeah.
moment. So even now, I'm quite nervous about sharing some of my work to other
I
people to
totally
say,
get
I
it.
don't suppose you can give me a try. I know that obviously they're not going to tear it apart, but it's that initial anxiety of, is it going to be all right?
And it's totally natural. I mean,
I know,
I'm lucky I don't get
absolutely.
anxiety anymore, but then I've been doing
Yeah.
stage stuff for so long. I can stand on stage and I can hold court for hours, as I'm sure I put you through in the past.
Yeah.
but it comes from a place of I want to show you it's okay. You know that there
Yeah.
is no one idea of what a game is, except mine, of course. I'm always right. No, joke. But
Yeah.
the point is that there are. So I'm a big believer in free to play games. I'm a big believer in live ops. That doesn't mean that I think that you can't have nice little cozy one-off short-term games. But I'm
Yeah.
coming at it from a point of view of what is going to maximize your commercial potential, reduction of risk, and how you're going to get an organization to be able to make a commercial game experience. That is why I say a lot of the things I do, not because I'm making a judgment on the cultural value or benefits. Like, for example, I've just started playing Tiny Bookshop, and it is one of the nicest,
Yeah.
wonderful games I've played in forever. And I'm not sure who made it, but somebody mentioned it might have been even the guys who were involved in Counter Strike at one point. But anyway, I can't remember who made the Tiny Bookshop. I'm sure I misheard them. But the point being that there is an audience for content.
Yeah.
And if you're going to make a game commercially, your first lesson is I'm not making it for me. Well, how do you learn who you're making a game for, how an audience will react if you don't make them? And how do
Yeah.
you have the safety net to start trying to make things if you don't start when you have an opportunity? And what better opportunity is to
Mhm.
start out of HE level, FE level, where you can actually try it without any risk, without
Yeah.
consequence.
Yeah.
Isn't that magic?
Absolutely. And like I said, though FE
Yeah,
is, I think, the industry's greatest power
yeah,
and greatest super
yeah,
weapon is
yeah.
education. And I think unless it's supported, that raw talent will slowly start to trickle away. And I think we need to be enhancing education so
Yeah.
much stronger. And you think if we can enhance and nurture these learners and designers at this point now, think of what projects and what games we could be experiencing in the next 5 to 10 years. You know what I
And
mean?
you can
So
go,
we need to be nurturing them more.
yeah, you can go a little bit further than that because if you think about it, we've already discarded, in the nicest possible sense, if there is such a thing, a whole bunch of people from the industry. Those who stay with it, those who are able to get back into the industry, um,
Yeah.
will, be in high demand. But we're going to get to the point where we didn't hire all those people for no reason in the past. We're going to get to the stage where we have need for that talent because the games industry isn't shrinking.
Oh
So
no, not a chance. No,
complexity
absolutely
of
not.
making
There's always going
games,
to be a
yeah,
demand.
complexity of making games isn't shrinking. We're not,
Yeah.
and even with the rise of AI, we haven't seen a reduction in jobs. I think overall,
No.
technology doesn't. It does. It does. You do lose jobs when technology innovations happen. Absolutely no question. But you often, and I think almost always, end up creating new jobs in other spaces, and I think
Mhm.
that's where we're going now. I know that the AI era is complicated. I know that the games industry culling has been complicated, but I still am of the belief that 3 years down the line, there is going to be a gap in people who are able to take on senior roles in game teams because they won't have had
Yeah.
the training, they won't have had the expertise, they wouldn't have had the people who are passing down the institutional knowledge Well, how do we compensate for that? Well, let's get people at FE enjoying making games to get started. Let's get our courses to incorporate the talent, skills, adaptation, knowledge, and the breadth of wider subject matter,
Yeah,
like psychology, like economics, that are necessary to make games work. And
yeah,
let's make sure we instill things like leadership, things like management, production standards. Let's instill that into people as you go through the entire length of the education process, so that when people come out, they're not just trained to do a specific job. They're trained to
yeah.
think and adapt and look at what problem solving needs to be done in that job.
Exactly. It's those soft skills,
Yeah.
as always. It will always be them. And I think the more that we can nurture them, the more that we can support them, I think they will do really well.
Sounds good. Sounds like a perfect place to end it. Michael, thank you so much. If people
Yeah.
want to find out more about
Um,
what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
so I'm on LinkedIn. Again, just my name, Michael Farrow-Killick. Same on Blue Sky as well. I think it's Michael or Michael F. Killick on there. But yes, I can leave an email. But if you want to have a chat further about further education in games, I'm more than all ears. More than all ears. Sorry.
Always. And on that note, and I might as well do the plug. So the new book is out, Playing with Balance. So if you're interested in that, it's on all good bookstores. And someone said, well, actually, I think it's definitely Amazon. It's Routledge Press, various others. I'm sure you can find it, and I can be found on LinkedIn as well. With that, we've been talking about how education is still a critical factor in the state of the industry, and that we have some challenges right now. But what we hope is that the nurturing of talent is absolutely fundamental and always will be. And with that note, we'll be back next time when we're talking about more things related to the way and the state of the industry here on the Game Dev Local podcast. Thank you very much for your time. Please like, subscribe, follow, and all the other stuff, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Hey.